Into CNN, Kristi Noem is out as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. We have a team of reporters on this. Let's start with Kristen Holmes at the White House. Kristen, it was, like 10 minutes ago that you were reporting that her job was in jeopardy, and now it's official.
Yep, President Trump has announced that he has fired the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. This is the first cabinet position that he has fired during his second term. Of course, the only other high-profile ouster we've had like this was when Mike Waltz served as the head of the National Security Council. He was the National Security Advisor. So President Trump just posted this on Truth Social. He said, "I am pleased to announce that the highly respected United States Senator from the great state of Oklahoma, Mark Wayne Mullen, will become the United States Secretary of Homeland Security effective March 31st, 2026. And Boris, just so you know, this is one of the names that we had heard he was floating in these conversations he was having with lawmakers on Capitol Hill. The current Secretary, Kristi Noem, who has served us well and has had numerous and spectacular results, especially on the border, will be moving to be special envoy for the Shield of the Americas, our new security initiative in the Western Hemisphere. We are announcing on Saturday in Doral, Florida. I thank Kristi for her service at Homeland." Again, this is
breaking news is sending shockwaves through Washington, a cabinet-level shakeup that few expected to happen this quickly. President Trump has officially removed Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, marking the first cabinet firing of his second term, and the timing could not be more dramatic, coming just after a bruising round of hearings on Capitol Hill, where lawmakers from both parties questioned her decisions, her management of the department, and a series of controversial incidents that had been building for weeks, from a controversial immigration crackdown to internal tension inside the department to questions about spending and oversight, all of it building pressure behind the scenes, until suddenly the White House made its move. And now the question everyone in Washington is asking is simple: what exactly pushed the president over the edge, and what happens next at the Department of Homeland Security?
Well, I have been hearing from Homeland Security officials who are stunned. Of course, they had been talking amongst themselves over the last several weeks and months, anticipating that the secretary may be out soon, given a series of missteps that they perceived she had done over the last several weeks. And one of those in particular, or many of those in particular, are stemmed in what happened in Minneapolis. Recall, of course, that surge of federal agents for that immigration enforcement operation where 2 U.S. citizens were fatally shot by federal agents. And it was the secretary who came out in that immediate aftermath, calling them domestic terrorists, something that she was grilled on during the congressional hearings this week, but that also shocked Homeland Security officials that she would so quickly draw conclusions over such incidents. And recall, too, that President Trump, in the aftermath of those shootings, had dispatched White House border czar Tom Homan to try to resolve the issues on the ground. It was the most high-profile rebuke over the course of the last year of the secretary and the way that she was managing the department and the immigration enforcement mission. Now, of course, the White House said at the time that she was in lockstep with Tom Homan, but it was also clear internally that there had been long simmering tensions there. So all of this to say that it had been building over some time now, what was happening in the department, the management of the department between her and her chief advisor, Corey Lewandowski, who was serving as a special government employee. There had been multiple concerns from within the department about the way that she was handling things, even most recently when she said that she was suspending TSA PreCheck, and then the department had to reverse that within hours. So this has been just a shock for a lot of Homeland Security officials who, even though they thought the writing was on the wall with her leaving at some point, the fact that it has happened now in the wake of these hearings just has them all scrambled.
Inside the Department of Homeland Security, the reaction was immediate shock. Officials who had been watching the situation unfold say the warning signs had been there for weeks, controversies piling up one after another, each one putting more pressure on the secretary's leadership. The most explosive incident coming from Minneapolis, where a federal immigration operation ended with 2 U.S. citizens being shot by agents, and in the immediate aftermath, Noem labeled them domestic terrorists, a statement that triggered intense backlash, both inside the department and on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers demanded answers, officials privately questioned the judgment behind the decision, And suddenly, the controversy surrounding the department was no longer just political. It had become a leadership crisis.
Yeah, and no question about it. And there had been a lack of support for Kristi Noem throughout, and a growing number of Republicans expressing frustration, concern, and actually, frankly, not even saying if they would support her continuing in the job. And no doubt that echoed at the White House, and President Trump clearly had some of those similar concerns as well. But I want you to listen to what some of the Republicans told me just in the last day about whether they would continue supporting Kristi Noem staying in that job.
Do you have confidence in Secretary Noem?
Time will tell.
Would you vote for her again if you had a chance?
Time will tell.
Do you have confidence in her,
I'm not going
Secretary?
to answer that. That's not my decision.
But you voted to confirm her.
That's not my decision. If the president, that's up to the president. I want to be a team player, and I want to secure the border, and I want to enforce our immigration laws. But I'm tired of trying to explain behavior that is inexplicable to me.
Well, if you had a chance to vote for her again, would you?
I'm not going to answer that, Manu. You can try 1,000 times, mate. Lots of luck to you.
That exchange revealed something even more important, a growing frustration among Republicans themselves, because when members of the president's own party start refusing to publicly defend a cabinet secretary, it usually signals that the political support behind that official has already begun to collapse. Senators who once voted to confirm Noem suddenly avoiding simple questions about whether they still had confidence in her, others openly admitting that they were tired of trying to explain decisions that they themselves did not understand. And in Washington, that kind of silence can speak louder than criticism, because when political allies stop defending you, it often means the clock on your leadership has already started running out.
Lead Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is back on Capitol Hill today, facing bipartisan criticism for her job performance. Yesterday from senators, today from House lawmakers, both often focusing on the aggressive, many would say overly aggressive, immigration crackdown in Minnesota and elsewhere. One Republican senator giving her a particularly harsh assessment.
Madam Secretary, you are right. What we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, we're beginning to get the American people to think that deporting people is wrong. It's the exact opposite. The way you're going about deporting them is wrong. I read your book last week. And honestly, some of the parts of it impressed me, but some of it distresses me. And I'll give you a good example of one that does. The passage where you talk about killing a dog that was 14 months old. You decided to kill that dog because you had not invested the appropriate time in training, and then you have the audacity to go into a book and say it's a leadership lesson about tough choices.
The hearing that followed turned into a defining moment, one that exposed just how deep the doubts about Noem's leadership had become. Lawmakers pressed her on spending decisions, on immigration enforcement strategies, and on the internal management of the department. And again, questions were met with uncertainty or answers that only created more controversy. One of the biggest flashpoints involved a massive advertising campaign, reportedly worth around $200 million. A campaign designed to tell migrants not to enter the United States illegally and to encourage self-deportation. But senators quickly began asking basic questions. Who produced the ads, how the contract was awarded, and why such a massive amount of taxpayer money went to a company that appeared to have almost no track record. According to lawmakers, the company receiving the contract had been incorporated only days earlier, which raised immediate red flags about transparency, oversight, and the way taxpayer funds were being handled. For senators responsible for government oversight, those questions were not minor details. They were exactly the kind of issues that can trigger investigations and political fallout. And during the hearing, it became clear that many lawmakers believed the department had not provided clear answers. Another point of tension involved the broader immigration enforcement strategy. Critics argued that the department had focused too heavily on producing large arrest numbers, while failing to provide detailed data showing how effective those operations actually were. Some lawmakers said they had been requesting information for weeks, including anonymized reports about arrests, outcomes, and detention decisions, but they claimed those requests had not been fulfilled, And when senators feel they are being stonewalled, the political temperature rises very quickly because oversight is one of the core powers of Congress, and any sign that information is being withheld can instantly become a major controversy. All of this created the perfect political storm: public criticism from lawmakers, internal concerns within the department, and growing frustration from political allies behind the scenes. Those pressures were reportedly reaching the White House, where advisors were watching the hearings unfold and measuring the political damage. For any administration, cabinet officials are supposed to stabilize policy and protect the president's agenda. But when those officials begin generating constant controversy, they can quickly become political liabilities instead. And that appears to be exactly what happened here. President Trump had previously avoided firing cabinet members early in his second term, partly because his first administration was widely criticized for a constant staff turnover. This time, the White House had tried to project stability, but the situation surrounding the Department of Homeland Security was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Controversial operations, public hearings filled with sharp criticism, questions about spending decisions, and perhaps most importantly, growing doubts among members of the president's own party. When those factors combine, they often lead to a moment where leadership decides that a change is unavoidable. And now that change has officially happened, Kristi Noem is no longer the Secretary of Homeland Security. Instead, she is being moved to a new role connected to a security initiative focused on cooperation across the Western Hemisphere, while the president has nominated Senator Markwayne Mullin to take over the department. If confirmed by the Senate, he would become the next leader of one of the most powerful agencies in the federal government, an agency responsible for border security, immigration enforcement, counterterrorism coordination, and protecting the United States from a wide range of threats. The confirmation process itself could become another major political moment because lawmakers will likely revisit many of the same questions that surfaced during the hearings. Questions about immigration policy, about oversight, and about how the department plans to avoid the controversies that defined the previous leadership. For now, though, Washington is reacting to the shock of the sudden change, a cabinet firing that happened faster than many expected, and a reminder that in politics, even powerful positions can shift overnight when pressure from hearings, lawmakers, and public scrutiny all collide at the same time.